Good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone to the Plan Commission meeting. It's Monday, December 9th, 2019. We have a quorum, and the first item of business is to consider approval of the minutes from the last meeting and entertain a motion.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Robinson. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Caravello. Any questions or comments about the minutes? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed, that carries. Next item is council representative report. Alderperson Caravello.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just briefly, at the November 26th council meeting, the conditional use permit for Pumpkin Patch Daycare and Nursery School at 1940 Jackson Street was approved. The certified survey map for the same was also approved, and the new housing fee report and housing affordability report were also approved.
Thank you very much. Any questions about the report? Hearing none, we'll go on to staff reports. Director Shield.
Contained in your packet is the monthly report for the department. Nearing the end of the year, so you'll start to see some year-to-date totals that are worthwhile. Year-to-date, we've had 17 new single-family starts this year, compared to a few more than that last year, but certainly we're on pace to be a little bit less than last year's total number for single-family starts. Any questions? I'd entertain them.
Hearing none, we'll move on to item number 5, which is a request by Forward Development Group for approval of a preliminary plat named The Meadows at Kettle Park West. And where would we like to start tonight?
I'll give you an overview.
It looks like we have some members of Forward Development's team here if there's any questions that come up. Looks like Dennis and Jim are back there.
So I wanted to start by just giving you an overview of the Kettle Park West plat that we're looking at tonight. The preliminary plat that's before you tonight encompasses the area shown on the screen and outlined in the bold. Essentially, it's the center portion of the plat area. You'll recall Jackson Street was extended to accommodate the commercial center, and then Phase 1A was the hotel and the senior housing facility. What was known as the North Plat is the area on the northern side of this area, as well as Oak Opening Drive, extending down and fronting the public parkland dedication area. That was approved in the and is being worked through the development agreement stage right now. So what's before us tonight is the area to the east of Oak Opening Drive, the center area, all the way back to the western edge of the Kettle Park West platted or lands. The area in blocks 1 and 2 are the areas on the east side, and these two center blocks are both planned for rear alley loaded garage, small lot, single family. The majority of the balance is all single family detached, and then there's one multifamily lot at the end of this cul-de-sac that's proposed as part of this preliminary plat area. There's a resolution contained in your packet that outlines a number of recommended conditions that would be placed on the approval. Any recommendation that comes out of the Plan Commission goes to the City Council. You'll recognize the resolution is actually a resolution for the City Council, but you'd be taking action essentially on the resolution with any changes you may suggest related to that. Are there any basic general questions to start? And otherwise I can work through the conditions of the preliminary plat resolution. Certainly commissioners in the community have seen aspects of this development for some time, and very recently a fair amount of discussion about the small lot single family that's part of this proposed area. In 2019, we amended the comprehensive plan to facilitate this type of development within the Kettle Park area. There was a comprehensive plan amendment specifically to this Kettle Park West development, and it reduced the multifamily component down to the single family lot with the alley loaded configuration as shown in the preliminary plat. So if you don't have any initial questions, I can walk through the proposed conditions of approval that would be contemplated by both this body and the city council.
Alderperson Carvello, go ahead.
I just have a brief question, which you're probably going to touch on in the explanation, but the mention of Aspen, is it Aspen Circle, and the condition of the city's concern about the turnaround
Yeah.
capability of vehicles?
So I actually have an illustration, or they provided one. It's no longer Aspen Circle, but in the preliminary plat documents that have been refined in the documents, it's really Telemark
Explains why I
Circle.
couldn't find it.
Yeah, we changed the name because we have a Aspen, was it Court or down off of Taylor Lane, which we thought might create some confusion.
And we're not convinced that Telemark on all, they have a Telemark Trail, a Telemark Circle, and a Telemark Court. We have concerns over that enumeration as well, but we'll work through that.
No Avenue?
Well, that's probably the next phase. No, I'm just kidding. I'd not proposed yet at this point. So to answer your question about this configuration, this kind of dog-eared component of the preliminary plat, this would be a one-way configuration around this. These are single-family detached parcels. The center circle would actually be a homeowners association responsibility to maintain this grass area. These actually are shown as currently as rear-loaded parking stalls for the tenants here. This would be a public street, but the interior area would be held in private by the homeowners association and maintained by them. Fire departments evaluated at least the configuration related to their equipment and the maneuverability of their equipment through and around that, and they're satisfied that this would be adequate for their large equipment.
And that seems like kind of a unique design with the parking stalls in that sort of, it's not a circle, but
Yeah.
whatever we want, in that piece that's in the, contained in that U there. And those are all, surrounding it are single-family homes.
Correct.
So the parking stalls being included in that piece are basically to get vehicles off of the street so that there is large vehicle turnaround and accessibility,
Yeah, that's
guessing?
your point on. That's exactly what staff identified as a concern about access around there for equipment. As they evaluated it to meet our equipment needs, they discovered that parking wouldn't be allowed on street. They proposed this rear-loaded private stall configuration within the interior.
Okay.
Anything you guys wanted to add to that, or did we cover it?
So,
And you can thank us for letting you go first tonight, by the way.
Very much appreciated. I forgot what I was going to say. Basically, on that configuration, with all the driveways that were also coming on and going onto the roadway, there wasn't really much room for parking either because of all the driveway entries. So we thought this would be a kind of a nice little effect to at least get some parking near those homes where we wouldn't be conflicting with any emergency vehicles, seeing we have enough space in that circle.
Okay. What do you think, Michael? Can they swing that?
I hope so.
Well, it could be you.
If you'd like, I can walk through the points of the resolution, because I think it'll answer some questions you may have or items you've heard discussed. So if I draw your attention to the resolution, I'm going to leave the large graphic up on the screen. Well, the graphic, so we can talk about aspects of it. And the part of the resolution I'll draw your attention to is found on the second page. So the first condition, if you will, that would be proposed, and some of these you'll recall from other developments, but this would require a development agreement being put together in place and approved by the city before we'd sign the plat. Talks about requiring all the public on-site and off-site requirements that would be needed to serve the plat, so that would be part of the development agreement. Item 2 talks about the zoning, requiring the zoning to be put in place. That's the zoning I just walked through. That enumerates the blocks and the lots that we just discussed. The small lot single family would be part of the planned development district. The larger single-family detached would be part of the SR5, single-family residential, and the single lot for MR10, which is a multifamily zoning. Condition number 3, they'd have to create a homeowners association to deal with the private outlots and the alleys. Those would be maintained privately, not by the city. And you've heard that discussed previously. Item number 4 actually might be less of an issue at this point. Aspen Circle that we just discussed as part of Telemark Circle. So the conditions of that, we've found geometrically that can handle the equipment that we need to utilize in that circle. Item 5, final plat would include language prohibiting access, driveway access onto Oak Opening Drive from any lot abutting Oak Opening Drive. I'll show that on the screen just so that you can help understand this. So all the lots that are right along this stretch here on both sides of the street would not be allowed to have driveway access onto Oak Opening Drive. Recall, all of these areas are alley-loaded garages anyhow, so we just wanted to reinforce that as part of the plat condition, so there wouldn't be driveways off of these lots. There are a couple of single-family detached facilities on this corner, another one on this corner. Their driveways would have to come off of the street, the side street, and not off of Oak Opening Drive. So that's condition 5. Condition 6, providing for another connection for pedestrian access to the parkland. This would be an outlot that would be dedicated to the city to accommodate that, both for pedestrians as well as stormwater piping. Item number 6 discusses the setback distance that would be required from the alley pavement curb edge to the backyard lot lines to the actual structure. That's proposed to be 25 feet. We have a graphic. You'll recall this illustration that we talked through a little bit before, but essentially they're going to have a ribbon curb that would run along again, this is a privately held outlot, which will have pavement with a ribbon curb defining the asphalt, and from 25 feet from the backside of that to the building envelope would be the proposed setback distance on these alley-loaded configurations. Item numbers 8. An agreement with the town, essentially to allow for the improvements as we discussed within the town of Rutland to extend Oak Opening Drive, or improve Oak Opening Drive and Deer Point Drive within the town of Rutland. We've talked about having that come together so we can make those traffic and pedestrian and bicycle connections that we feel are appropriate. Item 9, language you've seen in other development agreements, just confirmation from CARPC that they're comfortable with the extension of services in these areas, which shouldn't be any challenge. Item number 10, developer must provide evidence that the plat has been submitted to all the necessary objecting agencies, standard language related to the process. Parkland shall be dedicated on the final plat, or fees in lieu of parkland dedication shall be paid before the city will finalize the plat. You'll recall that the large parkland area is planned for in this area, but at this point it hasn't been deeded to the city, if you will, because that plat has not been recorded quite yet. Item number 12, the final plat has to include language relating to providing information to the prospective buyers that they have an obligation to pay park improvement fees at the time a building permit is issued. 13, standard language about reimbursement of all expenses that the city's incurred as part of this process. Item 14, performance bond or letter of credit related to covering the public improvements that are necessary for the development to move forward. Item 15, confirmation by the city staff that all the ordinances of 66 have been adhered to. Item 16 talks about the plans and specifications being approved by the city for the public improvements prior to recording of the plat. Item 17, stormwater and erosion control plans being approved by the city as well. 18 is one minor things, but we're working through easement issues related to how the utilities would be serviced for electric and the other facilities, especially in the small lot alley areas. But just confirmation that needs to be done before we'd sign the plat as well. Then lastly, we kind of touched on this, but the proposed street names need to be investigated for conflicts with the city of Stoughton, school district and fire district. And we think the telemark derivations of 3 might be a little too many, but we'll
Delivery
try to-
drivers have a hard time with that stuff,
telemark circle
especially around the holidays.
and the court might be a little challenging. So those are the proposed conditions that, again, many of them you've seen in other development agreements or in other resolutions approving plats to this stage. So if there's any questions, we'd certainly try to answer them.
Rodney,
Yeah.
what is the the width of the dedicated easement for the, on number 6?
Item number 6. Okay, just 1 second. I believe it's 15 feet, but let me confirm that. Sorry. It's 20 feet, actually.
It's a shame it was a little bit wider. I can see conflicts with the houses on either side of it.
Well, I think the thought was that a 5-foot wide sidewalk or even a 10-foot wide path could be placed in there and still have potentially 5 feet on either side.
As I said, I can still see there being
Yeah.
conflict with either residents on either side of that.
Did you have some comments or
On
examples?
the
of
design of that walkway in there, your ordinance standard is a 20-foot minimum with a 5 to 10-foot walk in the middle of it. So it provides a ride-off area if somebody's on that, and it keeps it, there's still the 7-foot or whatever the standard zoning setback is between the edge of that lot and where the house is. So there's substantial different distance between the walkway and the house.
Is this, are there examples of this that you've seen on these types of products?
I've run into this in a couple places, and they function fairly well. The problem that I ran into 25 years ago was utilities locating a transformer box basically
pull it out for a
at the end of that walkway, which made it impossible to get, emergency apparatus into the park. This had happened up in Windsor, DeForest, and in Verona. So it's keeping an eye on when they're installing the utilities along the back of those lots where that transformer gets put. So you want to make sure that you keep that opening in there. And improving it with an asphalt or concrete walkway up front with the public infrastructure that's put in is critical too. So everyone knows that that's a public walkway.
Did you want to follow up or anything else on that one?
No, just a concern.
Okay. Go ahead, Phil.
I've got a comment. It seems like those dimensions might be if, like, a tree barrier or something wanted to be placed between the path and the houses. It seems like that's going to be a little bit narrow, just in case. Otherwise, it seems like the houses are going to be relatively close to the trail in my mind, and I'm just thinking if it would be, something that would improve that, to
I
put
think
some
we-
sort of trees or something in there to,
You'd want to stipulate that any vegetative hedge or whatever that's planted on the private property next to it can't encroach within that outlot. That's the mechanism to do it. Now, if the city chooses to landscape that outlot on their own, I don't know if you would or not, but that 20-foot space is what's there for plowing open that walkway and/or landscaping the area. But I think the standard would be the expectation that the landscaping that's placed on the lot could not encroach over the lot line.
Rodney, what is the width of our trail that's along Williams Drive?
10 feet.
10 feet? And this is going to be 5 feet?
No, it'll allow for
No,
a
no.
10-foot.
This will allow for 10?
It'll allow for a 10-foot with 5 feet on either side. maybe not a perfect comparison, but Westview Ridge, I think we made improvements upon this. Westview Ridge has a pedestrian sidewalk between the homes in Westview Ridge. Back in the 90s, we accommodated that with a 10-foot wide easement as opposed to a dedication. This dedication, there was only a 10-foot, and they put a 5-foot sidewalk in there. Not saying it's better, but it's certainly different. I think we tried to accommodate it better with a wider amount of dedicated land for this area. Other questions?
Any other questions on any of the items? Okay, so we're looking for a recommendation to City Council, so I guess if somebody's willing to make a motion on the resolution.
I will move to approve this and send it forward on to council.
Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Robinson. Any discussion on the motion?
Can I just ask?
Sure.
We kind of chuckled a little bit about the telemark name. Do you agree that we should try to work to have different names or
Absolutely.
variations? Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Any other questions or clarifications? Hear none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed. That'll go to council, be January.
January.
Item number 6 is an additional request from Ford Development Group for approval of a certified survey map. Rodney will bring the map up here in just a moment.
Trying to.
You're multitasking tonight, huh?
Well, it's not loading.
You should
very
just
well
show me
for
how to
either.
run that pointer for you, that might help.
Yeah. And the network's not liking me. I got too many.
Okay.
Well, suffice it to say, there's a CSM in your packet. Pieces of it are on your screen as well, but the graphic isn't coming through properly at this point. So what I'd like to go over is there's a resolution to consider this CSM as well. And that is I can walk through the points of that proposed action item as well. Recall, just for illustrative purposes for people watching, this is a CSM that's the southern part of the Kettle Park West development, directly adjacent to Highway 138, and it's the segment that would have the last piece of the connection of State Highway 138 and Oak Opening Drive. The resolution contains 5 recommendations before it would be approved. Outlot 1 is proposed to be dedicated as city public right-of-way. That would actually be the stretch that connects the street of Oak Opening Drive to State Highway 138. Item number 2, it's not accepting Outlot 2. Outlot 2 is the large stormwater management area center to this certified survey map. We'd anticipate that being considered as part of a dedication at a future time when the development agreement for the improvements to Oak Opening Drive occur and when all the stormwater improvements are fully made within Outlot 2. Item number 3, Lot 1, and I'm sorry the graphic isn't showing up on the screen properly. Lot 1 is the large residential, the only developable piece of land within the CSM, but it's proposed to not allow for Lot 1 to be developed, and there'd be a restriction placed on it so that no housing or any construction could occur on it until such time the city's worked out an agreement for the public connection to State Highway 138. Item number 4. Oh, question as I go?
I'll let you finish first.
Okay. Outlot 2, it needs to be zoned institutional. It's part of the larger stormwater basin and needs to be zoned institutional. Item number 5, again, written confirmation from CARPC, Capital Area Regional Planning Commission, that it would be suitable for development under the urban service area regulations. And then 6, standard language related to reimbursement for fees associated with it. That covers the proposed recommendations of the CSM.
You had a question?
I do. Unfortunately, this map does not show, the ones that we can see, by the way,
I'm working on it.
Does not show where lot one, on the survey, on the maps, on the resolution that we passed just prior to this one, where does lot one meet up with that? Because I need to get some clarification on something.
Yeah, let me start this thing over and see if
Sure.
I can get us connected.
Which map are you looking at? Are you looking at this one?
No, I'm looking at the certified survey map, where I was just a second ago. Where'd it go?
You're looking at this.
I'm losing the damn thing. Thank you. There it is, I got it.
Well, if you opened up a few more windows, maybe it would work.
I think that might have been part of the problem.
Overload?
I'm working on it.
You've got this, right?
It's this one.
Tom, you've got this, right?
Yeah, I've got
Yeah,
that.
that's what you're
That's what I'm
looking
looking
at.
at.
I want to see how it connects.
I want to see,
How it compares to,
well, I'm going to go back to the preliminary plat
okay,
and,
how it compares to this map.
yes.
Okay.
Almost there.
If I can get my computer to do what it wants to do. Taking its sweet time. We agreed that nothing will be built from this road this way.
Mm-hmm.
But they're only saying it's from here this way. This is their out, this is where the lot ends. This is, this mark here is this.
You see that where it's marked with the arrow there, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, I think I've got two illustrations that'll help us here. That's actually the CSM, but I was going to show this illustration.
Right.
Um,
So,
go
the,
ahead.
during the last council meeting, we had a discussion regarding what restrictions would be allowable or were needed before they could proceed with developing past, I don't know what the name of that street is, Telemart, whatever.
The one below Jackson.
I think at council it was the as-yet unnamed street.
Yes,
But
which is in block 2.
This one
Right.
right here.
Yep, right there. So, this, what we're talking about right now is where lot 1 ends, which is at the bottom of that yellow.
Right here.
I'm questioning, I know that they're kind of different, but at the same time they're the same.
Yeah, I think I can address your question.
Okay, thank you.
For the people that weren't at the meeting, there was discussion about restricting development or construction of the homes on this section of the plat
Yes.
until such time as the city had worked through and the actual connection to State Highway 138, or at some point. That would be able to be restricted as part of the development agreement, one of the conditions that we enumerated as part of the preliminary plat.
Okay.
Again, we took action on a preliminary plat, which is functionally the layout.
I
And
understand.
the final plat would come later, and as part of that, a development agreement would have to be in place. The communication about future potential deed restrictions until such time that would be dealt with is able to be accomplished as part of that development agreement.
I just want the commission to be aware
Sure.
of that fact that it's there and it's not lost in the shuffle.
Yep. Well, it feeds into this discussion as well, because essentially that's what this one, as part of the CSM, which is not a plat, it's done slightly differently. So this Lot 1, which is proposed for residential development, is being restricted as part of this approval and subsequent agreement, so that it wouldn't have construction occur until there is a development agreement allowing that to occur. Does that answer your question and help others here?
That's what I'm hoping for.
Okay.
Do you guys understand that? Do you have any questions about that? Anything else you want to add?
Good.
Okay.
This is the illustration I was trying to show before, but in essence, this area was the north plat or the prior plat you've taken action on. The one we just took action on is the colored one here, and the CSM is the area encompassed below. Those are the conditions that are outlined in the resolution. If you have any additions or changes, we'd be open to hear them as well.
Okay, hearing none, we are looking for a recommendation on this one as well for the city council. So I would entertain a motion. For the CSM.
I will make a motion to approve and move it on to council.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Commissioner Robinson. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed, that carries. And that takes us to item number 7, which is a request by Jeb McMahon for a conditional use permit to allow a 2-flat residential use at 616 Ridge Street. We do have it noticed for a public hearing. Is there anything we want to cover before we close the meeting and go into the public hearing?
For the commissioners, the packet of materials contains, I think, many of the questions you would normally encounter. Graphically on the screen, I'm showing the location map just to indicate where it's located. Then the documentation indicates the history related to the facility. And we do have it scheduled for a public hearing because a 2-flat residential would be conditional in this district if approved.
Any questions before we go into the public hearing? Seeing none, so we'll close the regular meeting and then we reopen for a public hearing. So if anybody would wish to speak, we can come up to the microphone and if you want to just, yeah, you can bring that up. That'd be great. We just need it for the record. You can go ahead and introduce yourself.
Thank you for the opportunity to talk to this matter. My name is Julie Peterson. I live on the corner of Ridge and Lynn Street in Stoughton. I am second generation Stoughton. My dad was born and raised in the east side. I was born and raised on the east side. My children have been born and raised on the east side of Stoughton. I've lived there for the past 36 years. It's a very small neighborhood. It's a single family neighborhood. There's one rental unit across the street from me that, to be honest with you, has more police calls than any other residents in the neighborhood. My main concern, to be truthful, is that this house has been a single-family house for years. It has not been a rental unit for several years. I understand the gentleman that has bought the property is going to flip it. He has no vested interest in this neighborhood. The traffic, I think, is going to be an issue. It's a very small driveway. There's a garage and there's a very steep driveway. My concern is if this was a rental unit, you're going to have 2, 3, maybe 4 cars that are going to be parking in the street. Since the hospital closure, we have probably 200 to 300 cars a day that go up and down Ridge Street up to Lynn Street. In the morning, it's very heavy. In the afternoon, it's very heavy. It's a nice neighborhood. It's a single-family neighborhood. I understand the wanting to flip a house and make money, but this is a single-family neighborhood, and I would really urge you and ask you to please keep it that way. Thank you.
Thank you. And you'd like to speak as well?
Yes.
Okay,
Sorry.
it's okay.
My name's Melissa Watkins. I live at 617 Ridge Street, so right across the street. I've lived in the neighborhood for 3 years, and I've loved the neighborhood. It's a great family neighborhood. I think my biggest concerns here are parking and property values. So property values continue to rise with the need of houses, but once you bring a rental property into a neighborhood like that, there's a chance that our property values will go down. The other thing is we have a lot of small children in the neighborhood, and the more cars you bring on the street, the more dangerous it gets. So I just want to make sure that that stays safe for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. you. Is there anyone else that would wish to speak tonight? I think we know who you are.
Yes, who knows? Emily Barr. I don't live in the neighborhood. I have a question about conditional use. It was my understanding that conditional use is not any longer a legal or zoning categorization. Why are we back to conditional use? Just a brief answer to that. I have no quibble with this particular property. I even looked at it when it had the foreclosure sale.
Conditional uses are still standard within our zoning code, and they still are within many communities. We have not changed our system of conditional uses at this point. I don't think it's accurate to say they're not legal. It's to indicate there's potential challenges related to how they're applied. So certainly there's something we're looking at into the future to possibly change that to make many more uses permitted outright. Right now, this offers the opportunity for public input probably on a greater list of uses than making many uses permitted without a public hearing process.
So the conditional use title, the conditional use nomenclature is still alive, well, and the city has done nothing to change their ordinances or delineations to prohibit it.
That's correct.
And it's not likely to happen? Is this going to squeak in under the wire and be prevented 6 months from now, or you don't know?
There is nothing in the works to unilaterally remove conditional use permitting processes within the city of Stoughton. So it would not change immediately. There isn't any movement afoot to do so. I think what we have to be cognizant of is if we remove the conditional use process, you very well will have a greater list of permitted uses and less public input related to, I'll call them marginal uses or uses that normally would have gotten public testimony.
Like this one. This is a change
This
of
one or
use
any- yes.
that is causing some question.
Sure.
All right, very well. I think you've answered
you.
my question. Thank you.
And I would just add for the commissioners that this has been the subject of a lot of conversation with the League of Municipalities, which is one of the trades and lobby groups that the city belongs to. And I can tell you I've been to multiple conferences and seminars on this topic, and it's a classic case where you ask two lawyers the question and you get three answers about what the law means. There's a lot of confusion about how to interpret it, and there's an effort to try to have municipalities work together to change the codes as a group rather than individually, because it's very expensive to have the attorneys rewrite all the ordinances that are affected by the conditional use permit. So we're kind of been taking a wait and see attitude to see how that works out. But for now, we operate as we do until further notice. And right now, I don't really have a timetable on when that may occur. Okay. Anybody else wish to speak? Come on up.
I don't know where my place is, but my name is Jeb McMahon, so I'm the one that put this in front of you today. It is my understanding that the property and the way the rules work here is that when it falls, this was a bank-owned property, so it fell into disrepair. It has 2 kitchens, 2 bathrooms. It's a full 2 units upstairs and downstairs. It is my understanding once it's not operated like that for more than 365 days, that we have to come back to have this hearing. So I just wanted to make sure it was clear that I have a lot of experience as a landlord. My intentions are to improve the property, to have it be a piece that is not in disrepair anymore for the city here. And I have a lot of experience doing that, but not in Stoughton. This is my first opportunity here in Stoughton, so hopefully we can get away from, like parking issues and things like that. I can't say who the owner is going to be in the future, but at least when I'm in control of it, those things would be addressed. And I think my track record in other villages like Broadhead and Orfordville, which is primarily where I own my rental units, my track record speaks for itself as far as staying on top of those pieces. So That's what I want to say.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else wish to speak at the public hearing on this item? Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing and reopen for our regular business. So we do have the request for the conditional use permit. Are there any questions from any of the commissioners? Alderperson Caravello?
I have a question which I don't see skimming through the information here is how many bedrooms is each unit?
I don't know the answer.
One bedroom. Okay.
Any additional questions or follow-up?
It says here that comprehensive plan's future land use designates this property as a single-family residential. So right now, what is it at?
What, I'm sorry, what?
Number 2 of your
Yep.
Letter to Mr. McMahon.
Yep.
He says here that it's the future land use map designates the property as single family. What is it now?
It is zoned,
Zone single family.
correct.
So why is it in the future and not now, presently?
It's a conditionally.
But we can change the wording in the resolution if you'd like.
Just saying.
Thank you.
And when was the last time that this was actually used as a conditional use as a rental property?
We don't have record of when it was,
Fell out?
right. It's more than that, more than 365 days it's been.
It's been years. It's been
There you go.
25 years. No.
It's a rental. Doesn't mean it wasn't a two-flat. Maybe it was owner occupied.
Yeah.
Commissioner Robinson, did you have?
Yes, if we allow this conditional use to go forward, and in 365 days, is there going to be a problem if in 365 days it's not allowed to go forward? Is there going to be some issues there?
Yeah, it'd have to be established within the 365 days as a two-family or two-flat. Otherwise, it would need to go back through the process again to be reconsidered.
But once it's approved, it'll continue?
Yeah, once it's approved, if we approve that to go forward right now,
Yep.
is there a problem reversing that after 365 days?
Reversing it back to a single family
Yeah,
by the city or by the owner?
by the city. If it's found
It's allowed outright.
to be a problem, a bigger problem in the neighborhood than anticipated.
Yeah.
We could, but I don't know if we could force them.
I don't think we could force it back to single family unless it was discontinued for a period of 365 days. Once it's been reestablished, if it gets approved and it gets reestablished as a two-flat, that would be allowed to be continued. And I don't think the city could revert it back to a single family without the owner's consent.
Go ahead.
Can I ask Mr. McMahon a question? Is that
Yeah, as long as
allowed?
we don't get into a long dialogue.
Okay, I just wanted to, I think I heard him express that at this point, as far as you are concerned, your intent is to hold on to the property and rent it out. I mean, at this,
I need to get it in a state where it is rentable. There's no heat in the property right now. That system broke when it went through its foreclosure. So they're actually going to start the process tomorrow to get some of those utilities back up and running. I need to get it in a rentable state, get it rented out, show a track record of making money. I mean, that's when people buy income-based property. It has to show the track record, and there's other things that need to be addressed there to get it to that state.
so getting it back to a rentable state and then potentially selling it to someone else that will use it as an
Yes.
income property, that's your,
That's
that's
yes.
your long-term.
Yes. That's what I do. I buy and sell property, and we hold them as, to make them quality properties, and then we sell them. That's the way, I've had properties that I've owned for 20 years. I've had some that you own for 6 months. I don't know where this is going to take me as far as Stoughton, but this is my first opportunity to get in Stoughton, so that's what I can tell you.
Okay. Does anybody know how long it's been, it's vacant now, how long it has been vacant?
I can't answer that, to tell you the truth, but I thought it was like right around about a year ago that it went through its bank foreclosure. So I'm assuming it was vacant for some time leading up to that too, but that's me guessing. I don't know for sure.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Otherwise, we're looking for a recommendation for the city council. Anybody care to make a motion on this one? Is there any additional information you would need? Commissioner Seltzer?
Thank you, Mayor. Right now, the situation for that property, where is it now? Right, I mean, is it empty right now? Is it, and it's owned by the bank? Okay. Well, I guess I would make the motion that we allow this change just for the sake of having it voted, I guess. Because having an empty property this large and yet obviously an old-fashioned style property is a detriment to the city. So if somebody's willing to take this on and plan to make a profit from it, I think it would be a good way to go, and I guess I would move to go ahead and grant this.
Is there a second?
Can we add to this motion that,
Yeah, once we second it, we can do an amendment if you'd wish. Or you could ask him to add something to his motion, I guess, before you second it.
it's just the parking issue mainly?
A what?
The parking issue, somehow addressing the parking issue, and I don't know.
That, and well, maybe that's minor compared to just having an empty building sitting there.
Well, yeah,
But no, it's true. And go ahead, you're welcome to express it.
I'll go ahead and second it. I
Okay.
do like the idea that the building has been salvaged. And my only concern is the parking. I don't want to see 4 cars parked outside on the street and blocking that, creating problems with parking.
Well, it looks like the driveway would hold at least 1, if not 2. And how about the garage?
The garage is a single stall.
So you could get 3 total, and 2 to 3, and then whatever left over would be on the road, and it's 2 1-bedrooms. Okay. So you probably wouldn't have more than 4 people tops in there.
I would imagine you'd end up with, 4 people, so if there were a couple and they both drove, you'd end up with 4 people.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just looking at that picture. It looks like you can get 3 up and, 1 in the garage and 2 on the side of that driveway, so that 1 in the garage can still get out, so I'm good.
Okay.
I'll second it, and that's fine.
All right. Any other questions or comments?
Well, I just have
Go ahead.
one comment about looking at the driveway in this picture. It looks like that driveway, if it follows the slope of Ridge Street, might present a little bit of a, I don't know if I'd refer to it as a hazard necessarily, but since the driveway hasn't been graded and built up to be flat and it follows the slope, might create a difficulty, I guess, for people parking their cars in an ingress and egress out of those vehicles. If what we're looking at right now is accurate, it looks a little, because I know Ridge Street's a little steep.
Sure, we just have to make it brief. The rules don't really allow, but we're willing to stretch them for you. Okay,
My name is
just,
Kim Robinson.
okay.
I live next door at 624 Ridge Street. I've lived in that neighborhood for 30 years, and I was present at the house across the street when that was a two-flat, and they had regularly parked 2 cars in the driveway. When Nathan Knutson owned that house, they regularly had 2 cars in that driveway, all through the winter and whatever. And so to my knowledge, that house has been a two-flat for probably a consecutive time of maybe 4 to 6 years before Nathan moved back into it and used it as a single-family dwelling, if that's helpful.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions or comments from the commissioners? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed, that carries. So that'll go to the city council in January. We meet on the second Tuesday in January here at 7 o'clock. You're more than welcome to come and speak to the issue that night if you wish. Okay, item number 8 is a request by Stoughton Trailers Incorporated for parking access and outdoor storage improvements at 1111 Veterans Road. Director Shield.
Contained in your packet is a fairly substantial improvement that Stone Trailers is making to their facility on Veterans Road in County A. You'll notice there's a number of pages and a number of project areas within the development proposal or the site plan that's included in your packet. The applicant's here. I don't know if you guys wanted to give a summary of the project as you see it, or if you'd like us to just carry the torch.
I can give a summary.
There you go.
So the goals of the project here are to get Stoughton Trailers plant employees parking off of Veterans Road. Primarily, most of those employees park in that area as there's not adequate on-site parking currently. The second large goal of this project is to increase the security on-site at this property. So Stoughton Trailers operations, they currently have a lot of inbound delivery, outbound trailer pickup, and then the third large goal here is to increase their trailer storage on site. So you'll see as Mr. Shield goes through some of these items where they'd like to increase that storage, the security features and the parking features. Thank you.
I'll show them kind of on this larger scale map, just so you have an orientation, but certainly the details of each of the project areas is included in your packet. On the north side of the plant project, they have a parking area that's being expanded and improved with asphalt and tree islands here to accommodate some additional staff parking. They have perimeter fencing that extends somewhere in I'm doing it approximately from this area along this facility and around their new storage area for trailers in this location, fencing to be improved as well, all the way along here. And then down along the western edge of their site is the majority of on-site, off-street employee parking that's being accommodated within a fenced-in area. Veterans Road extends down to about the railroad tracks on the bottom of the page here. And there's East Street that connects in with Veterans Road at about this location. They're proposing to have a controlled access point off of Veterans Road at this location to help facilitate, and they can speak to the business side of it, but essentially to better manage the employee flow into a controlled area behind fencing, but not into their manufacturing facility proper. They also are able to use a newly constructed guard shack, if you will, that's proposed at this location and would be monitored at this point of access. They also have near the front of their site, near the railroad tracks, an area with what I understand will serve as a pickup and drop off of trailers that are being picked up after being constructed. There is a large opening that's being proposed at this facility. You can understand what they do. They make semi-trailers, so they're trying to accommodate that movement well here. They are in communication with the Dane County officials related to any special access considerations that they might have related to this. But aside from that, we would need to approve, if you will, the larger width opening at that site. The landscaping plans and the lighting plans are contained in the packet. Interior to the parking area, and I'm sorry I'm not doing this justice, but the magnitude of this is creating a large employee parking area, paved surface, landscaping islands included here that would control access by their employees at a controlled gate into their facility as they enter and leave work. The area to the north, on this northeast corner, as you've driven by there, most of it's undeveloped, but they do have some gravel parking that's been utilized for staff in the past. This is being converted to a storage area for completed trailer parking. Actually black coated chain link fence, 8 foot high, with slats is proposed around the storage area. And in front of the employee parking area is a hedge, as well as the improved fencing in this area as well. They have some additional landscaping at their entrance point to their plant facility here. Built into this is also some stormwater improvements, some asphalt improvements to certain areas to facilitate access through their campus. Did I hit the high points? Okay.
Anything you wanted to add, or should we open it up for questions? Come on up, Lori.
Lori Steen, the facility manager there. Just want to point out our primary goal for this project is to secure the facility as well as make some major improvements on the aesthetics of the property. We really want to emphasize that our goal is to make the property look a lot more professional and add a lot of landscaping all the way around from Academy down to Veterans Drive there. We really want to get the employees off the street because today we've got a lot of congestion with the trailers coming in and out of Veterans Road. The employees, especially during our shift changes, it's not a safe environment. So with this project, we're proposing separating the trailer traffic from the pedestrian traffic, and it'll make it a lot safer out on the road. And it gets all of our vehicles off of Veterans Drive as well. We'll have turnstiles at the employee parking lots so that employees actually have to swipe to get into the property. They'll be both on the Veterans Drive side as well as the Academy Street side there. So I just wanted to point out where our goal is to make the property look a lot more professional.
Lori, can you just walk through kind of the access point here to help them understand how deliveries and drivers of large trucks come into the facility?
Yes, so we're proposing basically 3 lanes down there. The 2 are going to be for incoming. Because one of the reasons why we're doing the 2 lanes for incoming is for people that already have authorization to come onto the property, pre-authorization. They'll have like an RFD coder in their vehicle, and then the gate will just open up for them. The others, they've got to stop and check in with our dispatcher or guard there. And then the 3rd lane is for exiting. But in between those 3 lanes is basically a staging area, because we do have points throughout the year where we've got large pickups happening. We just went through this with one of our customers. So having that availability, have trucks lined up there will be a huge help, because then they're not going to be on the street, they'll be on our property. And then we're creating the staging area just south of that as well too, which will help immensely as well too, by being able to stage trailers, and they can pick them up without us actually having to be there for them.
I would add the 3 lanes is something I think is pretty common, especially when you get down in the Chicago area in the manufacturing, because it does create a bottleneck if everybody has to stop, or if you have an RF coder or something, a barcode scanner to open up the gate. It really just helps keep traffic flowing, and it keeps vehicles from driving around, which also is a safety hazard for pedestrians that might be walking in front of the vehicles. So, I think it's a great improvement from what's there currently.
And I just want to add too, from a stormwater management side, we're going to make some major improvements on the property with stormwater management. Today, all of the water runs off of the buildings out onto the grounds there. And what's happened over the years, going southward, we've had a lot of erosion issues going down onto the railroad tracks. So we're going to fix that. We're going to reroute the water from the rooftop to our retention ponds and fix that area along the railroad tracks there, so that we don't have an instance of land soils getting onto the railroad tracks. So this project is going to fix a lot of issues.
I'd like to make a motion to go ahead and approve the proposed improvements to the property at 111 Veterans Road, Stoughton, Wisconsin, to the parking and storage, and if that's what you're looking for.
Yep. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second. Okay. Anything you want to add, or any questions or comments? Go ahead.
Lighting plan?
For the parking area, it is compliant. We've got a photometric plan that would be compliant related to that.
Is it LED or is it?
Yeah.
There you go.
I think that they've been working with Stoughton Utilities on some items. I don't know if that's one of them or not. Okay.
All right.
Commissioner Seltzer?
Thank you, Mayor. Excuse my ignorance, but on the discussion of water erosion and that, is that part of the plan that we're looking at? Is that, so that's built into what we're approving?
Yes. There's a condition requiring them to submit their stormwater, and they have been, so we've been working with them on that.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? You're looking at it really close there, Tom.
Just trying, my computer's a little bit small.
Oh, anything specifically you're looking for?
No, I'm just looking,
Okay,
taking a tour.
all right. Seeing no further questions, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed. That motion carries. Thank you. And then item number 9 is discuss a potential zoning ordinance amendment related to communication towers. So that's kind of a random one.
Maybe random. We're not asking for action at this point, but you can see in your packet there's a draft proposal related to communication towers. There's been some federal/state changes that have opened up the door to allow or require communities to allow communication towers in areas of the community that we might have previously restricted them. And so part of the discussion we wanted to have is, right now the city attorney has drafted the version that's in your packet, which essentially allows communication towers to be in any district as a permitted use outright. Kind of gets to the crux of the discussion immediately, is because in their opinion, they believe that the overriding legislation seems to require that type of consideration.
That's at the federal level or the state, did you say?
Well, it's trickled down to state level, but it's from above. And so the draft that's before us is to create all these permitted districts, or the use of communication towers. That could be a tower up to 200 feet in any district. There is some potentially dissenting opinions about whether you can utilize them or require them to be part of a conditional use district, or evaluate them as a different, under different standards. We wanted to discuss whether the commission has any specific feelings about whether we should try to figure out a way to limit them in any district. We may or may not be able to do that, but we're trying to get some feedback from the commissioners as to whether you have a strong opinion about whether they should or could be employed with or deployed within residential areas, if we should have any surety requirements for removal of facilities if they're no longer being used, and whether we should try to create fall zones or setbacks within the different districts related to these facilities. Again, we're talking structures that could be potentially 200 feet high. Historically, they've been required to, we've generally permitted them in planned business or industrial districts in essence. But we're wanting to understand if there's a strong opinion from the commissioners about whether we should try to figure out a way to restrict these further.
Shall I give you a strong opinion?
We're welcome. That's what we're here for. We're asking.
You want them in parks?
My strong opinion is if I wouldn't vote for this even. I don't care what the federal government says. If it includes allowing them in a residential area, I'd say no, no matter what. I don't care. And that's the way life will be. So yes, please find ways to limit the placement. And it definitely would, no matter where they're at, they will definitely need to have a fall zone and setbacks, just like any other structure that we have. Make them large setbacks.
And I think your second issue of removal if it's not being used or if it's been abandoned.
Some type of surety, whether we should seek some type of surety so that abandoned and or discontinued use, okay, yeah.
Go ahead.
I've been on the kind of the other side of this in the state of Indiana when I lived there, and they had the opposite problem with this kind of allowance that was allowed, and then the attempt to legally disallow it and have it taken down because of problems. So I would say without a doubt we should at the very least table this until we can do a little more research on what other communities might have run into and what problems might have occurred. And this seems somewhat to be sort of a blanket approval, whereas I think we need to be more careful about it and take some more time to look at it.
What kind of challenges did you have in Indiana with them?
Interference that was being caused in the properties around them, and it was
Like
somewhat...
radio wave interference or
Yes.
visual interference?
Radio wave, and actually there was a concern, though I don't know that it was legitimate, that these might have just been us Indiana, well, I wasn't one of them, but the concern that it was affecting their health, or it might cause radio waves and problems, which seems a little extreme, but I think we should really look carefully at this before we try to approve it.
Well, that's why we have it here tonight as a discussion item, because we weren't trying to get approval tonight. We wanted some
Okay.
input and feedback, appreciate the comments we've heard. I'd encourage you to, in your spare time, read the attorney letter, just so you have a little more background related to their opinion related to this and their drafting proposal. But we'll certainly try to take these into consideration, continue the dialogue related to that as we move forward with it.
Yeah, and if you wake up in the middle of the night and you think, oh, here's one I should have mentioned, feel free to email that to Rodney the next morning or even that night if you'd wish.
Bring it on.
He'll be waiting up all night for those emails. Go ahead, Phil.
Yeah, I agree with what the other commissioners have said. I happen to know somebody that has a condition that was brought on by living adjacent to a mobile cell phone tower that caused some negative health situations to arise. Also, one thing that would be really a shame to see is if something happened where in our downtown historic district, somehow somebody got permission some way to put up a cell phone tower that really would not look very nice in our landmark, our historic district. That would really not be in keeping with our nice downtown. I also have another question is if this relates to, if you guys know if this relates to what is going to be necessary for the coming 5G antennas that, from what I understand, are going to be as opposed to the opposite of fewer and farther between. It sounds like they're going to be requested to be pretty much everywhere.
We're evaluating this options for that because we think what's going to happen is those are going to be proposed in public rights-of-ways in many locations. As you indicated, many of them probably scattered throughout the community. It does appear that they're being constructed in more discrete manner. So maybe they would encircle a pole, for example, as opposed to be some obtuse connection to a facility. Nonetheless, we're looking at trying to devise a way to evaluate applications within the public right-of-way. After that's done, we'll end up dealing with that within zoning, because zoning would deal with the private installations. But right now, we're trying to, because these facilities and carriers have some rights to the public use of the public right-of-way. We want to be able to manage that. We think that's why they're probably going to be most commonly placed within the public right-of-way, because they may have some inherent, what level of right, but some level of right to use the public right-of-way for some of those facilities. So that's where we're focusing first, and then that'll morph into a later discussion about them on private property.
Yeah, we had a meeting last week with us and utilities, public works, 2 attorneys on that very topic. So we're trying to get ahead of it, but this legislation comes to us sometimes out of nowhere, and other times we have plenty of notice. So we're trying to put ourselves in a position to best manage it and protect our interests. But certainly this is another example of that where we like to have more local control rather than less, but the heavy lobby makes it more challenging for us to maintain that level of control. That's all I'm going to say.
Yep, I get it.
Yeah. That's polite. It's about as polite as I can get at a public meeting. Any other questions or comments on this one? Otherwise, I'm not sure when it'll come back, or it'll be an ongoing, or do we have a timetable for this one?
No, not a sunset, but we're trying to get it resolved and trying to get something incorporated, but we're not up against a window.
Okay. All right. That takes us to future agenda items. Is there anything that you guys are just dying to talk about at a future meeting? Or are we putting enough in front of you as it is?
don't know, maybe I should throw something out there that's been bouncing around in my head lately. Dan? Yeah, pretty scary. Is something, since we just had the folks from Stoughton Trailers about building a better parking area, it sounds like they're gonna solve some problems, with the whole scope of their plan, but, something about maybe moving Stoughton as a city forward as far as generating our own electricity, hopefully, with maybe something like a downtown solar district or some sort of initiative with structures that might be accommodating to do something like putting solar panels up and moving us basically more efficiently and greener.
Okay.
I know that's a very broad,
That's
just
fine.
throwing it out there, but.
I know that we've done some walkthroughs on our buildings, and I don't know if you're talking about our municipal buildings or the city at large. And I know the CACP committee is working with Stoughton Utilities on those types of things. And I would say that Ben and well, Jean is the chairperson, but Ben is kind of leading the charge on that one. So there is some work that's being done, as well as some work that I'm participating with, and so is Jill and Corey Neely's from WPPI at the county level. And then we have a WPPI, I think it's the CEO is on the governor's task force. So we have some representation at the state level as well. So you might want to we can have you touch bases with either Ben or Jean or Regina or Jill at Utilities, and we can give you kind of a comprehensive update. So we don't duplicate their work, I guess is the point I'm trying to make.
Yep. Great,
All right?
sounds good.
Anything else? Otherwise, I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Second by Caravello. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed. We're adjourned. Thank you.